All right, what's up, guys? Figured I'd bust out the camera, record a little video, vlogs type of content today. I'm here with the boys as well as Maya, and yeah, I just wanted to talk. I felt the need to write this morning. Just wrote a few ideas down about why travel is such an investment into yourself. Basically, came up with this because last April was like a crazy moment for me. There's something called tribal transurfing that like we're kind of into, where it's you kind of go around doing different things, and you always have a group of people wherever you are. And last April 2022, I went from Miami to New York to LA, an unreal circuit, and it's like a lot of people's dream circuits. And I knew people everywhere I went, and had a place to stay. And now this April, I've done 4 cities in the past week. Melbourne, Sydney, Central Coast, Australia, and now I'm here in Bali. And yeah, basically, I don't travel for fun. I travel because I know long term it's gonna help me. That's why I've done so many countries over the past 6 months, is because every time I book a flight somewhere, it's with a certain purpose. So a lot of people hit me up on Instagram being like, yo, how do you travel so much? How are you doing this? And it's because I'm not going to party. I'm not sure what your opinion on like partying for travel is.
I mean, like, you can, right? Like, depending on how you live your life, it's just really, like, for me, if you want to talk about, like, what activities you're doing, it just depends on the length of time you're staying in a place. Like, I only really stay a month, like, 2.5 weeks to a month minimum. And because I'm working, like, that allows me to do everything I want to do. But if I was in a place for, like, 4 days, like, then, okay, yeah, I'm going to need to travel and do everything I want to see, all the things, without working. So like, okay, if you're at a place for like 3 or 4 days, then yeah, you can, like, I guess it would make sense to do whatever you please, partying included. But like when you're at a place for such longer periods of time, like I said, like a month, if you do actually want to party, like you can party and just make it on the weekends.
Yeah.
Like, so that's the thing. But like, part of that is discipline, but literally it's just when you stay at somewhere for a longer amount of time, you have way more flexibility to actually do as you please. 2 months,
3 months I found is ideal.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Like if you're living and working like long term, like 2 or 3 months, like 3 months is really like my whole purpose this year right now is moving from a place I'm spending like a general like month to 2 or 3 months at every spot. But that's so I can establish my 3 or 4 spots for this tribal transurfing we're talking about, where it's like, okay, I have 3 or 4 spots that I'm rotating between for 3 or 4 months throughout the year. So yeah, like most definitely that's where I think the sweet spot is for travel. And like that's, until I learned about this whole world that we're in, like I didn't really think of travel outside of anything more than a couple of weeks. Like a couple of weeks is pretty extreme, but that's when you're on. What we do is travel, it's not vacation.
Yeah.
I think that's like a really clear line, because people think, oh, I'm going to go party because they're in vacation mode, not travel mode, like the way we see it.
Yeah, for me, it all comes down to like the purpose you're doing it for. Whenever I go to a destination, I'm like, what do I really want to accomplish getting out of it? Like last year, for that whole rotation around the US, it was mostly networking, my education, and then one was just to see family again in New York. And then this year, it's mostly like networking, business, as well as my own education. That's always what I try to do in picking a destination. A lot of people are just like, oh, Dubai looks really cool. To be quite honest, like what we're doing in life isn't the cheapest thing in the world, right?
The cost of living in Bali is definitely lower than New York, Miami, or LA. If you want to live solid, like, you get an Airbnb here for, more than $1,000, and it literally kicks all the ass of everywhere. I just lived in Colombia, Medellin, Colombia, for a month and a half in a 3-bedroom apartment, which I don't know square footage, but it was huge. And like you can tell by this, like wraparound balcony. It was a penthouse. We had a jacuzzi on the balcony, a sauna in the apartment, and an ice bath, like on the balcony.
That's
and perfect. It was a 3-bedroom, and it was like $3,500 split amongst 3 people. And then we had a private chef that was 500 plus groceries, also split. So it's like, why would it? Because before that, I was living in Florida on the West Coast and spending some time in Miami. And it was like, okay, why? Like at that point, I was like, why would I even, want to live there when right now, I'm looking for adventure, cool stuff, places that are going to force me to grow even more. And I can have a higher quality of living there than I can for, equivalent prices in the US. It's not like, fuck the US and all of it, but like definitely looking to get the most out of life and everything. It's just like, okay, there's different levels and you can just step into whatever level. But why wouldn't you take advantage of what's of the best quality available to you?
Because you're spending so much money on it, it just has to be for something clear. And that's what I kind of do with travel is it's always very goal intention oriented. And I feel like you're going to get way more out of your investment that way.
Yeah. It's like when you get like, some like, I think a lot of us here are like where there are 3 or 4 different things I could have done right now. Like, and then like in May, even like I could go to like Talon, could come back to Bali, could, go to Greece. Like I have like all these different options.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, yeah, like I do pick that for sure. Like I play that where it's like, okay, what do I think is the most in line with whatever my goals and purpose are, or like the highest ROI in that way. And it's not that like I don't enjoy the people or the opportunity or not want to go to the other places. It's just like, okay, like it's, very blessed and fortunate to have those things. It's about picking the one that, that works the best, with the people, with the opportunity, with all the cool shit that's going on.
Yeah.
So like taking advantage of those sort of things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the timing here in Bali, like April's the time for it. And I didn't really realize that a year ago. And it's just insane for that. A lot of people also say like, all right, how do you not get distracted? If you do come with that intention of being like, all right, I'm going to meet cool people, see cool things, or certain cultures you go to and you're like, all right, I really want to dive deep in the culture. Some people like I have go work someplace. Like I worked in Israel for a bit because I really wanted to discover what it's like to live there and be truly part of their community. How do you not get distracted from that, from like what you initially go there to do? Like, how do you not get, because there's, especially here in Bali, there's so many temptations to go out, party, like.
Yeah, I mean, like that, from my personal experience, it matters the most about like what situations you put yourself into and like who you surround yourself with. So, I also get that question a lot where people are like, oh, like how, like, isn't this super tough? And I was like, no, like literally we set the intention before the trip. Like, so I've been in Bali with between 7 and 9, and like in my individual group, like 7 and 9 people. And the intentions were very clear. Like we have 5 people for the first time here traveling. And like that whole intention was for them to experience and see the country. And so that was, I guess, a little bit more of like a vacation experience sort of vibe, right? But otherwise,
you're
like
intentional about it then.
Yeah, intentionally there because they want to get a lot out of their visit here. But then like I'm here for the rest of the month, and so is Saban sitting down there working. And like that's where it's very clear, like in the people I will connect with from this standpoint when, the rest of my, like in Albert and Ava leave, we're going to get work done. So in that way, it's like, okay, when you're around the people who have the same intentions, it's much easier because you're not like, we know like 35 other people here doing all sorts of different things, but it's when you're around like the same positive influences of people looking for the same things or just setting the right intentions, it's much easier than if you're alone, right? Like, so if you're alone, no matter how good your discipline is, like temptation and everything else will pull you to other people because even if whatever introvert, extrovert bullshit, like they will still like, you will still be drawn to other people, and it gets easier and easier when there's no other literally peer pressure in a positive way.
Also, I know so many people on my social platforms, they do want to travel more on a budget. And I'm just like, when you're on a budget, it's like life or death. And therefore, that's even more drive to just like go there to do what you were meant to do.
That's so from someone who definitely, it's kind of interesting because I have a relative idea. Like now I have a relative idea, but I think you and I had a little bit similar experience. Like last year, basically, I said, I'm not doing the normal 9-to-5 life, right? And basically said, I graduated from university in May. And right after that, I came out to Bali for a month and then traveled all over the world, all over the US for like a year until I moved in September. And all of that travel was 100 to 0. Like that's the way to describe it is I would make the money, go on the trip and do all the cool shit, and then like almost go back to 0 and basically just rinse, repeat that process. So like from that standpoint, I have no regrets whatsoever about it. And like I encourage so many others to take action on whether or no, like if they want to travel and they feel they're supposed to travel, like kind of let those things go. I made, for example, my last time I came to Bali, I made the money for like to literally buy the ticket 2 weeks before I left. So a lot of that is like, okay, yeah, it requires greater amounts of like faith, and maybe like relative, not lack, but like belief that it's going to work out, and like more free. Like you have to have more faith than you have fear.
Yeah.
In that same way, because it's like I believe in abundance and learning, and like belief in self is like, okay, I know I'm going to make things work.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, okay, so I'll do it. And if it's like you were saying, like these trips are investments and travel is an investment. In that way, it's like, okay, like I know, like, okay, what am I gonna do if I don't go on the trip and don't spend the money? All I do is like say at that, especially like this point last year, if I was just staying in Ohio, like if we put it on a graph, right, and hopefully it's going in the proper direction. Like, okay, I'm staying in Ohio. This is the parallel. If I'm staying in Ohio, maybe I'll grow like this. But if I'm literally traveling halfway on the road around the world, taking risks, doing things I've never done before, like, that's going to dramatically increase the percentile and just potential for growth. So it's like just continually, like that's one of the things I marked and I was talking about with a mentor and a friend was, every single big jump or every single like jump or travel or larger term trip is where the most growth happens. And so if I know that's where the most growth happens, why would I not just target those events? So in that way, it's like, okay, it's living in that full abundance, not like that was, for me, I had a little bit of a lull and I realized like, okay, there was like, I slowed down the lull. And I was like, okay, what can I do to, you don't feel like you're scrambling. It's just like, what do you do to keep the momentum going? In a good way, because the more you can capitalize on that exponential growth, the better. And like, even if you do, travel for a certain point and then stop, that growth you experience will be worth way more than if you just stayed in one spot.
I completely agree with that. Like it's first off taking the risk, as you said, but also being in a completely new environment with new people who live a completely different lifestyle. That also is what propels growth, because it just gives you this added perspective. Like your perspective is so small when you're just in your hometown, and then if you get that perspective, that those two things, it's risk and perspective, really accelerate the growth.
Essentially, to think about, like, if you're going to travel, I really would recommend doing a month or a longer stay.
Yeah.
And if you're still thinking along the lines of, oh, I can't do this, I'm not going to be able to focus. Many people, I'm sure, obviously, you've heard of like monk mode.
Yeah.
So this is the way that I do it. I call it attack mode personally. And like I was saying earlier, when you stay for a month, you have time to do other things and, travel and see cool shit. But basically, if you're working and building things, attack mode is what I feel is most consistent and best, and most maintainable as well. Where in the week, you're working very disciplined, getting your stuff done. And, in addition to whatever sort of official business work you might have, it's training or learning a skill. So for example, in Bali, it's, we're working out, but also like, hey, I'm in Uluwatu, I'm going to learn to surf. So that's like in the mornings, I'm going surfing. And I come back and I have the focused work. And then for the meals, like, it's a little bit harder here to eat at home as much. Like it's very common to go to restaurants. So basically pick things like you can go to a cafe and get a pretty quick meal. It's more efficient. So doing pretty much that cycle Monday through Friday. And then I find everybody's like, oh, balance. Balance isn't work really hard and then go get hammered on the weekend and go nuts to where it like slows you down. It's contrast.
All right.
So part of that, even though just like the surfing during the day, is a little bit of contrast from like burnout of work or whatever. But also like once during the week, I'll do, okay, maybe that's where you go out to a party or out to a bigger dinner where it's like a social, you're getting a lot of like networking or social interaction for once during the week. And then when it comes to the weekend, that is where the heavy contrast comes in. So I'm working like one of the days during the weekend, like probably like 50 or 60%. So definitely not the same as really locking in during the week. And then the other thing is like a huge contrast. So, here in Bali, that could be like a day trip.
Yeah.
Like you go to Ubud for a day trip and do like a really spiritual retreat thing or climb a volcano. And then the other part of the weekend I use for like more reflection stuff. So like in that way, that's really easy for me to be consistent and see things, everything. So like Colombia, it was wake up, work out, come back, a lot of deep work, get time in there. In the afternoon, we have lunch with the private chef, and then later in the afternoon, it would be a dance lesson. And then dinner was also either prepared by the private chef, or you just use Rappi, which in Colombia is like Uber Eats, and get your meal delivered. And that was just like rinse and repeat. And then maybe like on Tuesday, they had a dance social. That would be the contrast during the week. And then on the weekend, it's like, okay, we go paragliding and work otherwise. So like those are the big contrast things that are just like really helpful. And you can just keep that consistent momentum moving and grow and be productive. So that's, if you're wondering like essentially how I approach it and how we do it, that's what I found to be the most effective strategy. And then with that, like monk mode, basically the difference between monk mode for anybody who doesn't know, monk mode is like complete 100% discipline, eating, working out, like literally like,
7 days a week.
Yeah, 7 days a week. And I've done that before. I've done that for 2 weeks. I've done that for 3 weeks. But I also notice sometimes, because I am a bit of a social human and I know part of my life basically rotates around experience. That doesn't work out as well long term. You get quicker burnout, but like the more consistency and momentum I can have and maintain, the better. So like that's why I love time.
Sick. Yeah, we'll include that as one of the action steps then. So I have like kind of a plan right now for like just like the whole thing between ideation and actually going and having a successful trip is like, I think first off, take the approach and get this mindset. It's an investment. You're just not spending money. Like whatever money you're putting down is going into you. You yourself are stock. So go at it at that mindset first. Next is come up with either the destination or the reason, that intention to travel. Most of the time, I would say have that intention first and have the destination match the intention. If you want to meet like-minded people, for me, that was the intention. I found that the destination for that was Bali. But if your intention, let's say, is to work, make a lot of money, I personally love Australia because their wages are so good. And then that you can match with that destination. Or let's say if you're really dying to go to Dubai, all right, you want to have Dubai, make sure you have a good intention behind that. And if you can't come up with one, then maybe it just isn't that right season of life for you. Next is just look at what budget you're working on and just have that in your mind, basically. One like pro tip that I have that I did last year was if you're quite young, which a lot of people on my socials are, you most likely have an all right credit score. A lot of credit cards nowadays, 0% interest for the first year. That's an investment. You're just spending that money up front. You go back home, you can always make that money up later. You're not going to have interest on it. You might lower your credit score a bit, but like this is an investment to yourself. And if you find that calling to do it, it's worth it. Next is obviously everyone's concerned. And what I've been hit up most about is money-wise. You got to just make the opportunity to make money while overseas if you're going long-term, whether that is a lot of people see the digital nomad work online, but that isn't feasible for a lot of people. And that's why I'm also super, like both Sean and I are super into getting jobs abroad. You get more engrossed in the culture if that is one of your intentions. And also depending on like how it is, most countries, if they are poorer, you can go there, and if they do have a working visa, get the working visa, and you're making enough money to survive, basically. Because that's what everyone else is getting paid to survive who's a local. So you should make that money. And then, like, that's basically it. Like, always go at it with the intention. Look, there's so many programs out there, too, for young people that they're like, do volunteer work, and we'll pay for your flight, we'll pay for food, we'll pay for housing. You just have to come out to this country. So if that's one of your intentions, go for that. A lot of labor-intensive jobs I've seen pay really well, like across the board in different countries.
Yeah. I mean, on the money thing too, like basically there's a ton of different things you could do. I would always encourage people to honestly like force themselves to produce in a way. So like if you say, oh, I have to wait till I'm at a certain point before I do this, it's almost it's like the what's it called? Like you move the
you're moving the needle, you're moving the timestamp.
Move the goalposts like further back. Like that's just from everyone I talk to is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this by then. And it's like, okay, no, like success of speed, you want to move faster. But generally, like even with that, like if you haven't read the 4-Hour Work Week, which is basically what we're doing, right? Like read the 4-Hour Work Week and then basically go to like these 4-Hour Work Week locations. So like Bali is a huge one. And I always encourage people to do Bali because literally like the average, granted they don't have like super hard traveling limitations. The average school teacher in the US could do Bali, no problem. Like, which people don't really realize or think about because like the most expensive thing about Bali is the flight. So it's like $800 to $1,500 US when you get it like enough in advance, like a couple months in advance. But then from that standpoint, everything else is pretty affordable. Like last year when I stayed, I don't know what the totals are for this year yet, but last year I stayed in 6 different villas for a month with like 6 other people, and it was like $843 just for me personally, which was less almost anywhere than what I would have paid for rent. And like we're talking like, I mean, you can show the villa, right? But like we're staying in places like we're in right now, you can probably tell it's pretty nice. So in that realm, like literally do it and go and make the money. And then if you're really like someone who wants to take a huge leap, like that's for me, what I did was I did have money saved up. And so I just kind of sent it to see like, oh, this is how I want to live. And it was like, yeah, let's go. And so I did it that way without really having anything established. But like what you're talking about, like there's so many, I guess, if you just want to travel and see, like what you were talking about, like there's so many opportunities where you can teach English, you can do the volunteer stuff, like super, super easy, like very, very low barrier to entry. Like, I mean, from my mind at this point now, I know I definitely think way different than a normal person. But like Bali, like just a Bali trip is pretty like beyond money and your mind of like, oh, I'm actually going all the way across the country. There's almost no barrier to entry whatsoever. And the money thing is like pretty minimal compared to, think about even like going to Europe or something.
Yeah.
But then from that standpoint, like it's even lower when you're, like your flights are paid for if you're teaching English or like doing like volunteer work. There's a couple of different volunteer programs you probably know, and I don't remember the names, where you just get paid and like work on a farm or something like that. So just literally, if you want to travel and the only thing holding you back is like how or oh I need to do this, like it's kind of cool. So quit doing that basically.
That's a huge reason on why I like make these videos and like try to push out that message. It's just so much more accessible than you think. Like actually doing this, the amount of time I've been doing it, I'm like, this is a lot easier than I thought it'd be in the end. Like riding the fucking scooter today. It's a lot easier. You're like getting on, you're like, oh shit. And you're just like, oh, like it's simple. The next step after you figure out your money is obviously, work for the money thing. Figure out a plan to get that money, or if you have enough saved up and you don't feel like working on your travel, that's great too. One huge thing for me, and a lot of people get lonely and stuff, is make friends online. We've met only like what?
This is our second time in person.
Maya I've never met in person. You guys haven't met before today. And it's just like knowing people before you get to a location is huge. I have a friend, he hit me up for advice. He's like, yeah, how'd you move abroad? I might be moving to Dubai soon. I'm like, literally go Instagram, location tag, look for people that you think might be cool and do that. Or just like different group chats you're in, ask around, put on your story, be like, hey, does anyone know anyone in X location? And chances are someone's gonna know, be like, oh, one of my good family friends lives there. Everyone, ever since I said I was coming to Australia, like so many of my old professors, old classmates have hit me up being like, oh, I have a second cousin who lives there. Here's their phone number. You should give them a call. And I just have this whole pipeline of people I still have to hit up. So that's like a huge thing. Even as simple as writing like yo in the DMs and just seeing if they respond, like that can make friends before you even get to the location. And the final step is take that leap of faith and just book that flight. You already have the plan on how you're gonna do it. You have your plan on your intention, which is gonna describe and really matter for what type of activities you're doing there. Now it's just booking the flight. The worst possible thing that happens if you book this flight is you don't make the flight. Or the second most worst thing is you get there and you're like, oh shit, this plan didn't go out as well as I thought. You always have your return flight back if you booked a return flight. If not, chances are you can. And if you do follow the steps of like, all right, like checking where your finances are and whatnot, and you can always go back. Most of the time it's going to work out.
Yeah, no, like that's really the only thing I would say is, and this is like, I guess, kind of what I warn or like basically tell anybody I talk to about travel who's taking these leaps is like, you're going to get hit with like all the way up to the point until you land.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be like almost bombarded with like little fearful things or things. So like when I came to Bali last, my dad was in my ear the whole time, like, oh, you're going to end up in a South Asian prison, right? Like Southeast Asian prison where rats are going to eat your body, all kinds of shit like that. And it'll be, you know, maybe even things that are less where it's like, oh, I feel like, I'm not sure. It's like literally, well, the way I describe it is the universe is testing you to see whether you really want to do it. So expect those things like that to happen. And like, that's almost even natural. And like, if you've done this properly and like, oh, you know, this is somewhere I really want to go, right? Like, it's only your job to just show, to prove like you really want to do it, and the obstacles will fall away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you just have to say, okay, like I'm going, like, you know, like the way you describe it, like you just buy your flight. And even when you buy your flight, there might be so many different things that are like, oh, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But like literally, like that is almost all. If you set the intention properly, you buy your flight, everything else you just kind of let go by you. You get on the plane, and unless something like insane happens, like just go there to the thing, to like go there to the place and, you know, start the adventure. Like even the flight is an adventure too. So it's
Yeah,
like,
I love
once you're on a
flights.
flight, you're there. Yeah.
Yeah, I love flying. Any last notes before I wrap it up, dude?
Nah,
Anyone?
just kind of that one.
Yeah.
Basically send it.
Yeah, so if you're curious at all about how I do these things, or like you feel like you want to take action on this, feel free to just comment. I read all the comments. Send me a DM too. Send any of my friends DMs who are in the similar sphere that I'm in. And I'm down to help anyone. I really think you, if you're watching this and you made it to this point, you're going to benefit from traveling. You're obviously interested in it. Just take that leap and go where you want to go. Literally just last night, I was helping a friend get over plane anxiety because he's like, I want to go travel, but I can't handle planes. Like I'm offering any tips I know to you because I think you're going to really benefit from this. If you have your intention, it's just going to draw you to that place, and then you're going to accomplish what you came there to do. So with that.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say the same thing. Feel free to reach out to me. Instagram is best at Will, WILL .COOMER. Will Coomer is my name, so please, same thing. Reach out. I'm happy to help in any way.
Yeah, fire.
Cheers, y'all.
All right, peace, y'all. Hope you guys have an epic day.